In today's podcast, you're going to learn that when you start to improvise on your selling process, you're going to lose. Here's a method that anyone can follow. Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. So recently, one of my consulting colleagues was bemoaning that his key salesperson was slipping. The signs were pretty obvious. The close rates were down, and given how well this company markets and how well their sales funnel worked, that was a cause for concern because those were some expensive leads that were not getting closed. And once they're lost, they rarely come back around again. So time was of the essence. He needed to solve this problem. So we all know this, but sometimes we need to be reminded that your brand and your marketing are designed to filter out non-ideal prospects so that you can spend more time on ideal ones, right? You can focus on a higher close rate if all you're talking to are ideal prospects. And if you spend a ton of time and money acquiring them, you don't want to mishandle your sales process and blow that opportunity. And that's why many selling organizations have very clear guidelines about how to walk an ideal prospect through their system. And the reason is because we know how your ideal customer buys. It's your non-ideal customer that is confusing to us. And so if we improvise to accommodate them, we're taking our eyes off the focus. So one, let's filter out non-ideal buyers if we can. But two, let's make sure that our sales process does that one last level of filtering. So my buddy, the owner of this consulting firm, dove into the forensics of his employees' sales calls, and he noted three things. He said, one, the average length of the first call was shrinking. And in his model, the first call is, hey, I'd really like to buy. Tell me how to get started. So it brings them into the process. They do a discovery, and all the customer needs manifest in this call, and all the value connections that the seller is going to make are established here. So this is a very critical call. They're already inclined to buy. That's how the filter works. Okay. So losing them at this stage, if they are an ideal buyer, is well, it's egregious, right? Second thing that my buddy noticed is that this salesperson was not setting the second call immediately. Again, this is a critical process, part of their selling process. So it was very important that you do this. You have to set that second call because that's how the process continues. And if the buyer won't make that second commitment, then you're done. They obviously got through the filter. They're not ideal. You can say, hey, I did everything I could, and you move on. But if we trust our improvised process over the process that's been designed, okay, we're going to have failure rates. And so not setting the second call was one of the indicators of potential failure. And the third thing that the salesperson was doing was he was talking price too soon. Okay, price and budget, as we all know, is going to be part of the conversation. But in this protocol, there were three key questions that the potential buyer needed to answer before they were qualified to have a conversation about what is the price of the service they were offering. And the great news for us is, this applies to us in our selling as well. So in my story, the salesperson was dumping all of their hope into a proposal. They were instead of sending out agreements, he was sending out proposals. Right? If they follow the process, you're sending an agreement to somebody who's already said they would sign it. If you're smoking hopium, as my friend Carl Becker has said at Jumpstart, if you're smoking hopium, you're going to let the proposal close this deal for you. And the technique that people who are going to close on proposals starts becoming telling the buyer what they're going to do instead of selling the outcomes that the buyer is actually interested in. So as soon as the buyer in this example, as soon as he said yes to anything, this salesperson was immediately going, well, let me get a proposal over to you. Right? They're jumping at the chance to send a proposal over, which is the completely wrong way to use a proposal in the first place. So what had been an 80% close rate, um, and was now down to 50%. And the 80% close rate, half of those were actually bad prospects that got through the system. Okay. And the other half of the ones that didn't close, we can drip nurture them. They might come back. We don't have really high hopes, but 80% is a great close rate in this model. At 50%, 20% of the buyers were ghosting, and we have no indication of what the other 30% were doing. So we were losing valuable data. That doesn't give us information to tell us how to tweak our marketing. He wasn't following the process. Process matters, right? And the bad buyers could come back around again because they weren't getting filtered out in this process. So this was a pretty big deal for my friend to solve. Now, I won't talk about his solution because it's, that's a different business, it's a different service, but the process that we need to use and that I recommend is very similar. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of how we sell our services, which are to get events done for our customers. Okay. 3 steps. Okay. Each step has a very critical purpose. We don't want to use them out of order. We want to get the steps in. If you can accelerate the steps and do them completely, good for you. But trying to accelerate it is not helpful. If the buyer wants to accelerate, that's great, as long as we're getting all the information that we need and covering everything that we need to cover. So I'm going to break this down into calls or meetings, however it manifests. They may be an in-person meeting. Some of them may be a Zoom call. Some of them may be a phone conversation. Some can be in person. Your mix will vary, right? Call number 1, meeting number 1 is that discovery call. It's not that first contact, say, hey, I like an upcoming project. I'd like to talk about it. It's the great, let's schedule some time. Okay. And this is a 60 to 75 minute call, right? You need to set aside some time for this. Now, it's not the size of the project that determines how long this call is going to take. It is the sophistication of the buyer, right? So call number 1, discovery, inquiry about the project opportunity. So now, whatever sales technique you use, whatever relationship building, trust building you use, fine, use all that, have all of that conversation you need to have. But the outcome, your goal for this first discovery call, besides the basic parameters of the project, is to answer 3 selling questions. Okay? And without the answers to these 3 questions, moving on does not make sense. Question number 1. Ask the buyer, tell me about your purchasing process for these services. What is the process you're going to use to determine who you're going to engage for this project? There's lots of different ways to word it, lots of different ways to weave it in, but the crux of the question is, how do you guys go about this? Question number 2, what is currently the most important buying criteria? And currently is important because the buying criteria in the past doesn't matter. What matters is today. We've all had customers whose buying criteria changed, and if we didn't change with them, things went south. So what is your current criteria today? What's the most important thing to you today, right? And then the third question is, when do you expect to make your decision? Okay. We need this information. All the other stuff is gravy, but if we have these bits of information, we can probably move forward. Now, you can weave these into conversation, you can glean them, or you can hit them hard, whatever works for you. Okay? Now, once you've gotten these responses, you restate them to the prospect. Whenever you can, mirror things back to them, make sure that you guys are on the same page, ask them to agree. Ask them if they agree with the restatement, allow them to modify it, restate it again, make sure we're clear so we move on. Here's an example. So from what I've heard you say, dear customer, is that there's a committee of executives that like to review your recommendations, and they sometimes have ideas and suggestions, and you'll need to put those back to your suppliers. So you've got an iterative process of developing the project. Generally, everybody's biggest concern is budget, but mostly it sounds like they don't want to be taken advantage of. Is that correct? Right? And you don't have a hard deadline for making your final decision, but here's my recommendation. since your project is in the first week of May, I recommend that you make your final decision by the middle of March and no later. And I also understand that it would make your life easier if you could get an earlier commitment, and I'm going to support you on that. I can help you with all of this. Does that match what you understand, what you shared with me? So state the baseline needs for the project as you see it. We've got agreement on what the background is. We've got our three major questions. The project is, hey, I see you've got 500 salespeople that you're bringing in from all over your organization around the world. You're getting them together for 2.5 days of product introduction, team building, motivation, and some practical business things that you need to take care of. Great. You're going to have some ideas about fit and finish. So we know everybody needs to hear, everybody needs to see. You're going to hand out some awards. Yay, let's put a little flash and trash in there. We are selling prosperity, so we want to look like a prosperous company. So we want a high fit and finish. Get agreement on that. Make sure that we understand that baseline need. Okay. Now, there's options to talk about. Again, we're still on call 1 here. Okay. Do you plan on recording this? Well, we haven't thought about that. Okay. Well, that's something to ask the team of executives. Here's some things that you can, to help support that question. Are you going to stream it? Do you have people who can't attend in person, but who need to be there? Tell me more about these awards. Is this something that's ad hoc during presentations, or is there a big dinner? Are you bringing in a band? Is there entertainment? Tell me what that looks like for you. How much excitement do you want to create? Okay. Learn enough about the project to be able to rough a budget into your head, right? You should be able to say, hey, on the fly, I'm seeing where this project range is falling in. Here's the baseline. Here's how much extra they might to spend, but you need to keep that to yourself. Okay. Get them to agree with everything that you've talked about first and say, hey, my best customers would spend $100,000 to $175,000 for this event. Okay. Is that what you've done in the past? Is that your budget this year? Tell me more about your needs. Okay. If they agree on the budget range or they have a stated budget, we are ready to move on to call 2. If they say, no, this is something we spent $50,000 on, I said, awesome. That's the only response you need to make. Awesome. Let me work on a $50,000 solution for you. So we will get your baseline needs. Okay. We're going to have to take out some of the fit and finish, but the baseline is still there. Okay. You don't have budget for some of these other things, but I can create those as enhancements for your executives to consider. I bet they'll find the money for it, right? Oh yeah, that's exactly how they work. They want to know what the minimum price is and then see what they can add to so that they can all get the things that are important to them. Great, we understand each other. Let's schedule call 2, and I'm going to review some things for you that you can take to them. Right. Now, call 2. We finished call 1 by reviewing everything we just agreed upon. We're going to start call 2. We're finished call 1. We're going to start call 2 with those same agreements. Okay, we review our agreements so far. Is there any new information you want to share? Yeah, I asked the executive team about, recording people attending remotely. Somebody mentioned the CEO might be coming in from the Netherlands, which changes everything. And I said, I understand. Okay, now, that's new information. You get to incorporate that in. You're going to make in this call your recommendations on what the buyer should spend and why. And if you just got new information, you've got to get up to speed very quickly and change your recommendation based on that. Now, fortunately, the baseline needs don't really change. Okay, we have to hear, we have to see, we have to be able to, whatever those baseline things are, they're going to be in the budget. What you recommend as enhancements is probably going to change. And then we'll talk later about options. Okay. Now, again, we're going back to the range that now this puts us at the higher end of our range. So my minimum recommendation is that you spend the $175,000, but there's about $50,000 worth of enhancements and options that you might want to consider. Okay. Listen to their feedback. If they've got price resistance, restate the baseline needs again and cite that budget. Okay. This is their minimum spend. do your executive team understand that they're going to have to spend at a minimum $75,000 to do this event without accommodating the CEO, without incorporating all this new information that you've given me, without having remote attendees, et cetera, et cetera. The baseline will do a good job for them, but it may not do all the things that they want. Now, continue to dial in the budget until we are ready to submit a proposal. What options would they like to entertain later? So, to get to the proposal phase, we need to agree on the baseline budget. We need to know which enhancements are top priority and which things are options, would be nice to have for consideration later. Okay. Say, thank you. I've got the information I need to have. I can have your proposal ready for you in 24 to 48 hours. Whatever that number might be, it needs to be fast because you need to schedule call 3. And call 3 is to present the proposal. So moving on to call 3, I have no preference about whether or not you send the proposal in advance, which many people want to have, and I think is a great courtesy, or you present it to them in person the first time and then give it to them at that time, present it to them in person and they can look at it later. Whatever works best for you, okay? Most educated buyers, sophisticated buyers are want to review the proposal in advance, prepare some questions, be better listeners. That will help them, accommodate them, send it to them in advance, okay? Now, in this call, make sure they understand what they're getting. Baseline takes care of all of these things. You're going to go into more detail, right? You're going to go a little bit more detail. This is going to give you up to this many microphones. This is going to allow you to play back. We're going to provide walk-in music for you. Tell them all the things that you're going to do with a little bit more detail, because now we're at that point. What does baseline include that they're not going to have to worry about? Okay. Reconfirm their decision deadline. Okay. Is your decision still on track for March 15th? Yes. Awesome. Ides of March. We're on track for that. Great. Get into the options and enhancements. Enhancements first. Any more feedback from the executive team on what's important? Yes, they're going to want me to do this, this, and this. Okay, well, I'm going to treat those enhancements as confirmed in this proposal, okay? And I'm going to leave everything else as an option. And there's these additional options that I've included in here, right? So what we're trying to do is make sure that we agree on what's pertinent in the proposal so that we can get to the meat of this call, which is terms and conditions. If we move on, here is how we work together, okay? Include the fact in your terms and conditions, which are, payments and deadlines, that postponing confirmation will affect the cost, right? Well, the executive team doesn't want to make a decision until April 1. I said, that is going to cost you a lot of money, okay? That's going to reduce the availability of the talent pool, not just for me, but for any supplier that you choose to hire on April 1st for a beginning of May job. I strongly recommend that you push back on that, okay? I'm going to leave this deadline in here. My proposal is good up until that date, right? Terms and conditions. Here's how we get paid, okay? This is not negotiable. This is what you're putting out there, okay? These are your terms and conditions. If they say, well, our procurement department likes to pay in 90 days, everybody's procurement department likes to pay in 90 days. They should ask for 120. I'm not going to do it. Okay? I can't be your bank. You're a Fortune 100 company, right? Now, we'll agree to all of that. They're used to paying for stuff in advance. They book hotels. They pay for food and beverage. No venue in the world was giving them 120-day terms, so don't worry about it. Just stay your ground. Now, what are the next steps? All right, I think I can get this through. I know how to answer the questions for the team. I don't think I'm going to need another call. I can probably get back to you in the next week. Great. Let me tell you about what happens after you confirm. The sooner you confirm, the better, because once I have a signed agreement, we get to schedule the kickoff meeting, and I'm going to get you to pay the reservation fee, but we can start working on your project. And the sooner we work on the project, the easier it is for us to keep costs down, okay? And if you add enhancements or options later, I can guarantee that price longer if you commit to the baseline. So you can give them a secondary deadline on enhancements, right? But you get the baseline confirmed. So to review, call one, get the 3 most important questions answered. What's their buying process? What's their decision priority this time? And what's their decision deadline? Make recommendations. Call number 2, review the budget options, state your recommendations, dial in their baseline budget, help them agree to a range for possible enhancements or options so that you can now write a proposal. Okay. And call number 3 is you review the proposal, you reaffirm the next steps. And if you're feeling optimistic, please schedule the kickoff call. Okay. If it's January and the deadline is in March, schedule the kickoff call for March 1 ahead of the deadline. So I'm going to optimistically schedule the kickoff call if that extra 2 weeks will help us do this and show them the benefits of doing all of that. Now, take this process I've just described, write it down, stick to it, follow it, and see how your results change. Okay? You can streamline it, you can tailor it better for your needs, but make sure that you've got these steps in there, that you're having the right conversations and you're getting the right commitments and the right information before you move on to the next step. And stop writing proposals, write agreements. A proposal is a reflection of everything we've agreed upon and talked about already. There should be no surprises in proposals. The only thing that's going to be new to the customer are terms and conditions which they're expecting. All right. So think about this. Send me some questions if you have them. Get out there, make better use of your time, get your close rate where it needs to be. Have a great 2025. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimpson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimpson.com for more information.